Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out the final 5 of the Camp Cretaceous Captivz Jurassic World figures from Toymonster International. We have had a few reviews up already of the other figures in this Camp Cretaceous wave, and line I guess you should say, as this is an entire line of figures, but this time we have again the final 5, no exact motivation behind which figures are included here. It's just the remaining ones, as we have the Indominus Rex. We also have the Tyrannosaurus Rex. We have the Baryonyx, which is Baryonyx Grim, I believe. We also have a glow-in-the-dark Baryonyx. We have a Pteranodon, a glow-in-the-dark Pteranodon, and Toro, the Carnotaurus. So we've got quite a bit of really cool figures here to take a look at. And if you haven't watched any of my previous reviews of the Toymonster International Captivz Jurassic World figures, then you wouldn't know of the fact that these are, in my opinion, the best Jurassic World minifigures that have ever existed. And I don't even just mean Jurassic World. Like, I feel like if there's ever been a line of Jurassic-related minifigures, these are the best that I've ever seen, because the sculpts are phenomenal for the size. They are honestly ridiculously nicely done. And the paint jobs are far and away better than I've ever seen on any other minifigures. So the Captivz figures are really kind of a cut above the rest when it comes to the overall quality of the figures that they release. These are just, again, incredible releases. However, the ones that we have here have actually already appeared in the previous line, as far as almost all of them. So we don't really need to take a look at the sculpts so much on these, as far as, a few of them, because we've already reviewed them in the past. But there is one in here that's a totally brand new figure, and that would be the Carnotaurus. However, the ones that we have reviewed in the past also have new paint schemes to them, so there is a lot of really awesomeness here before us to take a look at. So rather than talking about it forever, let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look, and check these out right now. So again, we have an Indominus Rex, which we did have in the initial wave, the initial run of Captivz Jurassic World figures. And again, this is the exact same sculpt as far as the Indominus goes as the previous one, which just means that it's an absolutely awesome sculpt yet again to have included in the line. You can see a really nice curve to the tail, a pretty nice dynamic pose for the Indominus. But this one also has a different paint application. However, it still remains similar to what the Indominus looks like. So if we actually get the older Indominus out here, you can see here what the older one looked like in comparison to the newer one. So the newer one is pretty much the same color, but this newer one has a really dark wash to it, and it's just completely like covered in this wash, which I think looks really cool. And it's really awesome how Toymonster International has managed to keep the Indominus still looking like the Indominus as far as the coloration goes, but just added in, a little extra touch as far as this one goes this time. Again, the previous one was like this really nice kind of light gray, but it had kind of like some white dry brushing and stuff over it. So it really did nicely replicate the Indominus. The newer one has a really dark look to it as far as the coloration goes. So maybe almost insinuating what a female Indominus might have looked like. The eyes look like they might almost be the same color, maybe a little bit of a darker red as opposed to the orange on the newer one. We do still have nicely painted nails on both the hands and the feet, which is definitely a huge plus. And overall, again, there's no real big difference. The sculpt is exactly the same, but we now have a different paint scheme, or at least somewhat different paint scheme, just kind of a really dark wash on it. And I think it looks really cool with that dark wash. Again, awesome having two different variants of the Indominus, and definitely another cool version of that figure. And then we have the Pteranodon, and the Pteranodon yet again is the same sculpt as the previous and initial run of the Toymonster International figures, but this one also sports a different paint scheme to it, and this one is a much nicer paint scheme in my opinion than the previous release. This time you can see a really nice dark green, and it's been beautifully dry brushed with kind of like a light green here over top of the wings and a lot of the areas of the body to make that detail pop beautifully. Really nice, very appealing looking coloration to the Pteranodon. We also have some of that green dry brushing up here on the top of the crest, even running out onto the beak. You can see the eyes are painted with a white, giving a nice black pupil, and considering how small those eyes are, they are impressively well done. And you can also see again some more of that green here on the beak right there. You can even see that the inside of the mouth is painted, so they just go the absolute extra mile as far as the paintwork of their figures goes. And then here on the underside you have kind of like a combination of like a pinkish color and then an off-white, and it just kind of blends and meshes together really quite nicely. You also even have like some light blues and stuff throughout the Pteranodon. Like when you get nice and close, you could pick up on extra color variation that you almost don't even notice right away until you get nice and close and look at it. And you can see that runs up the course of the entire underside, even into the throat. So there's, even more color variation than you realize to the figures when you get nice and close and take a look at it. And as far as the initial version goes, from the first round of Captivz figures, here was what the Pteranodon looked like originally, with kind of like a brighter blue, and we had kind of like an orange dry brushing over the wings, whereas this one has a lot nicer of a coloration with greens. And I just feel like generally the newer one is a lot more natural looking and a lot more lifelike looking as far as the coloration goes. And in one area you can see straight away like there was no pupil on the original Pteranodon, but there is on the newer one. So that's one thing that the Captivz line has really done a great job on, was improving their paint application on the newer figures, especially just by adding pupils and stuff, because a lot of the Captivz figures from the initial line didn't have pupils, but the newer ones do, and they just look so much better because of it. So another really fun version of the Pteranodon. And then of course we have one of the really rare versions of the figures here, as we have a glow-in-the-dark Pteranodon, which we will take a look at how these glow in the dark here in just a bit. But the sculpt itself is exactly the same as the Pteranodons that we had just seen. You can see it's like actually given like a translucent type of an appearance that you can see straight through the wing right there. But again, nothing different as far as the figure goes, just a really cool glow-in-the-dark version, and that's one of the harder defined versions. And then we've got our Baryonyx, and I believe this would be Baryonyx Grim, which he looks really quite nice. Really beautiful paint application to this one, as you have some nice greens that run along the back, and look at that paint all the way out onto the tail. Absolutely love to see that. The green is also kind of bordered by a like yellowish, kind of like a light yellow coloration that kind of outlines the entire green area, except for out here onto the neck. You can see it's non-existent out here. The eyes are painted with a yellow, given a nice black pupil. The body primarily is like a nice brown, but it's given a really dark black wash, so all the detail pops on it really nicely. You can see even an area of like pinkish coloration here underneath the eye. The teeth are painted beautifully. You can also see the inside of the mouth sports kind of a purplish coloration. The nails are painted. We have some nice grayish coloration here for the nails. So the figures, again, are extremely well done. You can even see the nails of the hands are painted, and it's just so impressive how much paintwork is put into figures so small to give them such an extremely lifelike and realistic appearance. It's super, super impressive on the part of Toymonster International. Of course, the sculpt of the new Baryonyx is the same sculpt as the previous one. So bringing in the previous one, you can see what the previous one looked like. It was kind of like a black coloration and then a gray. Similar design to the older one as far as the coloration goes, but obviously more so replicating a Camp Cretaceous Baryonyx rather than this blackish version back here. But you can also see again what I was saying as far as like no pupils, but the newer ones do have pupils. So just an extremely large improvement overall as far as the figures go, but both are absolutely awesome Baryonyx. Really love this one too. And then of course we have again the glow-in-the-dark one, and this is another of the really rare figures. Again, a bit of a translucent look to it. This is the glow-in-the-dark Baryonyx, the final of the really rare figures in this line. In the initial line, we had like gold and silver and stuff like that, copper type figures, but this newest one has glow-in-the-dark ones, and they're definitely really cool. Then we've got our Tyrannosaurus Rex, and we previously had a Rexy type T-Rex paint scheme, a nice brown variation. This time we have a very nice dark green. And on top of having some nice greens included, you have like some lighter coloration that's been dry brushed over top of a lot of the areas. You can see here on the underside of the feet, running along the underside of the tail, as well as running out here onto the stomach region of our Rex and even up into the throat. And you can just generally see that that greenish coloration has been dry brushed through quite a few different areas. You can see the inside of the mouth sports a nice pinkish coloration. Again, the teeth are painted. The nails are painted on this one, given actually a nice glossy black. so they shine quite realistically, even on the hands. So, yet again, a perfect example of just how far Toymonster International goes as far as the paint applications of their figures to make sure that you get the highest of quality minifigure from them. And this is another phenomenal T-Rex figure. Really happy to see kind of a male greenish type of a version here. And then we also have, of course, the original Tyrannosaurus, again sporting that Rexy type of a color scheme, and you can see the differences between the two. Very, very drastic difference as far as the tones of color used, but absolutely awesome looking Tyrannosaurs. The sculpt is exactly the same sculpt as the initial one, but just a phenomenal looking Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, however you'd like to term it, style Tyrannosaurus, and it's awesome now having kind of a male and female. And then as far as this review goes, the only truly new figure that we have here would be Carnotaurus Toro. So you can see that as far as the sculpt goes, Toro is kind of down in almost a crouching position, letting out a roar of anger. You can see the Carnotaurus horns, those trademark Carnotaurus horns, are sculpted out up there. You can even see some really nice tensing there in the neck as the dinosaur lets out that roar. The tongue is sticking out again, further showing off the roar that the Carnotaurus is giving us right there. You can also see the teeth are sculpted out and actually really nicely painted for their size. That is impressively well done. The eyes are a bit large, I will say that, as far as the paintwork goes, but considering the figure is so small, it's understandable that things like that would happen. I think that's the only, slightly distracting thing about the figure would be the size of the eyes, as they're just a tad too large compared to the way that they should be. They are painted with a yellow, giving a nice black pupil, so although they did go, a little bit further as far as usual to give us a nice looking eye, it's just a tad bit big. But the coloration is pretty much spot on to what you see on Carnotaurus Toro as far as like the tones of color used, as we have like a really nice variation of a brown, and then it's kind of littered with like black spots and stripes and stuff, and like kind of speckles all over the body. You could see those typical Carnotaurus kind of osteoderms running along the body right there. The right leg is stepping forward more so than the left, so you can kind of see that is really beautifully displayed as far as like stretching and bunching skin up throughout the figure. Of course, we have nicely painted nails, beautiful looking foot sculpt, and the tail is in a very strong curve that you can see out here, again further showing the kind of dynamic positioning of the Carnotaurus. You can also see the underside sports kind of a grayish coloration here, which looks quite nice, and then you can get a better idea of what this side looks like over here. Really nicely detailed, beautiful paint application, and an overall really cool looking Carnotaurus from the Captivz line. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that in the next line we'll get a Ceratosaurus or maybe like an Allosaurus or something like that. Some really cool species that the Toymonster International line has not made quite yet that I'm really excited to see, hopefully in the future. But this Toro is definitely a really nice figure, and you can even see that the actual wound that Toro is known for is over here on the face and nicely painted out as well. And it's on the correct side of the face and everything. So fantastic work again on the part of Toymonster International and their Captivz line. Definitely like the Carnotaurus as well. Another good thing about the Captivz figures is that they usually balance quite well, and you can see Toro does stand really nicely. The Pteranodon, obviously, you're not going to get any balancing from, as it's on its face pretty much. The Baryonyx, as far as the kind of glow-in-the-dark version, which correct the head a little bit right there. And then you can also see that one. Although it's kind of in like a quadrupedal position due to the positioning of the body, it still stands quite nicely. The only one that I'm really having a problem with would be the Indominus, which he can stand, but he seems to like want to fall over. I don't know if the figure has like some warping in the legs or what exactly is the case. The previous one stood perfectly, so I'm thinking maybe mine just has some warped legs and I'll have to fix those at some point. And then of course we've got the other Pteranodon. And then the final one would be the Tyrannosaurus right there, which also stands very nicely. But if we clear all of these guys out of the way here and we just keep in the glow-in-the-dark versions, we're going to go ahead, switch the light off, and check out these figures glowing right now. So there we go, and we can actually see that they glow differently. The Pteranodon has a really nice, very strong greenish glow, whereas the Baryonyx actually has more of a bluish glow, which they both work perfectly and really cool. Again, more rare versions of these figures. These are definitely the harder ones to find. There's also a glow-in-the-dark Bumpy, which we have taken a look at prior to this, but definitely another fun idea on the part of the Toymonster International line, and anybody that's around my age is probably going to really like these, because when I was a kid they always had glow-in-the-dark dinosaur figures out, so it really, on top of having an awesome Jurassic Park, Jurassic World nostalgic feel, also has a really cool nostalgic feel due to that glow-in-the-dark feature. As far as a size goes, I'm not going to measure each and every one, just going to hold the tape over here to give you guys a good idea of what the size is. Again, being minifigures, they're definitely on the smaller side, of course. Like for the Baryonyx here, now that I knocked that Rex over, you're looking at about the 3.5 inch or 9 centimeter range. And to help further show you the size, for a size comparison, here is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon, in comparison to our Captivz Jurassic World minifigures here, again showing off the fact that they are definitely of a smaller size, but they are also extremely impressive. And I feel like every time we reach this point where we have the size comparison and I show you just how small these figures truly are in comparison to these other figures that you may know of already, it just becomes apparent that these figures are so much more impressive than you realize when you actually see just how small they are and how unbelievably detailed they are, as well as ridiculously well painted for their size. Just truly a marvel, if you ask me, when it comes to the Jurassic World line, and definitely one of my favorite things that has come along from any type of a Jurassic line in a long time. So all of these Captivz Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, Toymonster International figures have been fantastic. And again, we now reach the end of the second wave of these figures, as the Camp Cretaceous figures are officially reviewed now after this, so we'll just have to sit back and await any future releases from the Toymonster International line as far as their Captivz Jurassic World figures go. These are, again, just absolutely beautiful looking figures, really nicely sculpted. Again, for the size, the sculpts are unbelievably highly detailed, because there's just so much shown in the sculpts, like really nice skin wrinkles, skin movement, beautiful scale detail. Even the teeth, no matter how small they are all sculpted out really nicely. It's just insane how much detail has gone into something so small as far as these Captivz figures go. And then you take that and you add in the fact that the paint is as nice as it is, and it's just honestly jaw-dropping how good these Toymonster International figures always are. They just blow my mind every time I get some new ones and I have an opportunity to take a look at them with you guys. I'm just consistently flabbergasted by how good these figures truly are. The Indominus is beautiful looking. Again, it's the same sculpt we had prior, which means it's a really nice sculpt because I was a big fan of it the first time around. Definitely a fan of it this time. I love the fact that they've given it, again, a really nice Indominus style coloration where it's not like anything that's too far off from what the Indominus looks like, while still allowing a different paint scheme than what we've had from the initial line. So they did do a great job on that Indominus. We also have the Pteranodon, which in my opinion, this Pteranodon is far superior to the initial Pteranodon, which the initial one was nice, but I feel like the coloration of this one is a lot more natural looking. Obviously, the original one was kind of replicating a Jurassic World style Pteranodon, whereas this one, I guess, would be a Camp Cretaceous style Pteranodon. Didn't really pay enough attention, I think, during that series to notice if this coloration does actually make an appearance in the show, but I can tell you that it looks fantastic on this figure, and I absolutely love the paintwork and sculpt of this Pteranodon. We also have a glow-in-the-dark version as well, which is one of the rare figures. I love the fact that they include those, again, really just tugging at my heartstrings as far as that nostalgic feel of glow-in-the-dark dinosaurs. We also have the Tyrannosaurus, which now sports a really nice greenish paint scheme, showing off more of a male-like coloration as opposed to the female coloration we had from the previous line, and the sculpt is phenomenal, just like it was the first time around, sporting a beautiful Rexy-like sculpt. Again, a beautiful Tyrannosaurus from Jurassic Park type sculpt, so not even specifically a Rexy type of a sculpt, as it could, replicate the female Rex from The Lost World quite nicely as well. But again, a beautiful looking sculpt and a pretty nice looking paint scheme on this one now with more of a greenish coloration. Not exactly matching up to what a Lost World style Tyrannosaurus would look like, but still a greenish coloration, again insinuating more of a male type of a look. We also have the Baryonyx, and the Baryonyx this time showing off a really nice grim type color scheme. And also the glow-in-the-dark one, of course, is like the extra added dinosaur you did not know you needed in your life, but you absolutely do, because again, being an absolutely awesome glow-in-the-dark figure, it is ridiculously cool. And then again, the Baryonyx itself is really highly detailed, and I think the actual paint application of that one might be one of the nicest ones of the entire bunch, because it has a really nice wash on it and very nice careful paintwork, really beautifully replicating a mini style version of Grimm. And then the Carnotaurus would be the final one here, and the Carnotaurus is also really nicely done. The sculpt is quite beautiful. The only area on that one that's a little bit of a downside would be the larger eyes, but other than that, it's a fantastic interpretation of Carnotaurus Toro with a really nice kind of a dynamic pose to the figure, as well as some really faithful paintwork similar to what we see on Toro in the show, even including the wound on his face and everything. Just a really cool minifigure style version of Carnotaurus Toro. So again, these figures, all of them fantastic. They are showing up right now at Walmart, as well as Kroger, as well as Five Below. So you have plenty of options finally here in the United States to get a hold of these, because prior to this, they were not here with the initial wave. So it's really awesome to see that they are here now. Make sure you head to those stores, pick yourself up some of these. They are definitely worth buying. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.